There are nights when the familiar world collapses in silence, and you suddenly hear the soft click of a latch, not the thunderous sound of destruction, but a delicate, persistent sound, as if a new threshold has just been opened. You stand there trembling amidst the storm, still clutching the fragments of your old life, names, roles, familiar answers. Then, from behind the half-opened door, another silence emanates, not the silence of emptiness, but of a budding life yet to be named. The crisis does not appear merely to erase, but to invite. It places you before yourself, before the forgotten faces, before the darkness waiting to be acknowledged. This door does not close. It opens, leading to a journey from the storm to the darkness, from a sliver of light to the threshold, from the challenge of the gatekeeper to the alchemical vessel, and finally to a life where the open door becomes a habit. I see you standing in the midst of a storm, not a storm in the sky, but a storm within, where every old structure trembles. The walls you once trusted crack and crumble. There are moments when you hear the sound of bricks falling within. These are the notions of yourself. The rows built over years, now shattering. And you tremble, for you do not know who you are when those mirrors have broken into pieces. The crisis comes like an intruder. But if you observe closely, you will see it acts like a teacher. It does not destroy without reason. It uproots what has withered, forcing you to look at the dark soil where forgotten seeds still silently await their time to rise. You call it loss, but the soul calls it a beginning. In the Red Book, I wrote, those who have not entered their own collapse have not entered their soul. The crisis is that collapse, and through it, a call to return. You feel fear, and that is right, for the ego always fears letting go. It is nourished by control, by stable images, but a crisis is like a great wind sweeping the earth, allowing no false walls to stand. I do not ask you to be strong at this moment. I only invite you to acknowledge, I am in the midst of a storm. Do not conceal, do not delude yourself that everything is still fine. Only when you look directly at the storm's force can you discover something wondrous at the very center of the storm. There is a still space. That is where the crisis reveals its true purpose, not to destroy you, but to clear space for new creation. A crisis is the dissolution of what is dead, and simultaneously the echo of life wanting to enter. Acknowledging the storm is acknowledging that you are no longer as you were, and in that moment you can begin to see a sliver of light. After the storm has shaken your foundations, you will encounter something even more frightening: darkness. It does not come from outside, but from within you. It is the part you have avoided, suppressed by upbringing, veiled by society's smiles and empty praises. Now, in the crisis, the shadow steps forward. You see it in many forms. The anger you did not allow yourself to express, the envy you always denied, the weakness you hid beneath a mask of strength. The darkness does not come to torment you. It comes to claim its existence. It says, I, too, am you. You have forgotten me too long, and this makes you tremble. For the ego, which seeks to control everything, finds itself facing a stranger who is actually the rest of yourself. In Ion, I wrote, the shadow is a part of the personality, and if ignored, it lives beyond consciousness, causing unexpected and chaotic actions. You may see this In a crisis, you react fiercely, lose control, speak words you thought were not yours. In truth, that is the shadow, the repressed part of your personality, seeking to be heard. Symbols in dreams also often remind you of the darkness, lightless rooms, dense forests, indistinct face. Each symbol carries the same message. Come here, do not run. And if you dare to stand still, to listen, you will see that the darkness holds not only monsters, but treasures. In mythology, the treasure is always guarded by a dragon. Likewise, in the soul, vital energy is sealed within the shadow, waiting for you to bravely approach. Facing the darkness does not mean you will immediately love it. No, the first step is simply acknowledging its presence. Look into its eyes and say, I know you are there. This is an act of courage. For most people, choose to flee, deny, or project the shadow onto others, seeing their own cruelty in enemies, or their weakness in friends, their selfishness in loved ones. But the truth is, the shadow always begins within. In therapy, I often invite patients to record their dreams, for dreams are the most honest mirror of the shadow. You may see yourself in a dream as an enemy, a murderer, or a coward. Do not rush to reject it. Remember, the unconscious does not send you objective truth, but symbolic images for you to explore. The shadow in the dream is the part you need to recognize to take another step in the journey of individuation. When facing the darkness, you may feel as if you are walking in a night forest, where light cannot reach. But remember, in that very forest, you will find a path never before walked. And at the end of that path, you will see the first sliver of light when you have stood still in the dark forest. When your eyes have adjusted to the thick blackness, there comes a moment when you notice something strange. The darkness is not entirely silent. Amid the stifling quiet, a slender sliver of light appears. Not a dazzling light that blinds you, but a gentle, delicate light, like a silver thread piercing through the leaves. It is so small that if you keep struggling, you will miss it. But if you pause, listen, that sliver of light becomes the first sign that darkness is not all there is. This sliver of light does not come from the outer world. It is a signal from the self, the deep center of the soul, where the potential for wholeness resides in man and his symbols. I emphasized that the unconscious never sends only destruction. It always carries the seed of healing, and here, that seed is the sliver of light. Many of my patients have recounted dreams during a crisis. They see a small candle in a cave, a star flickering in a dark sky, or a door, a jar with light seeping through. All these symbols carry the same message. The path continues, low, small. The sliver of light holds transformative power, for it affirms that darkness does not have the right to claim the entire soul. The key here is not to rush toward the light immediately, but to learn to trust its presence. For the ego, accustomed to control, often demands clear, quick answers. But the sliver of light invites you only with patience. It whispers, stay with me. Accept that you do not yet know everything. And in Greek mythology, Persephone was dragged into the underworld. But in that darkness, she found the first barley seed, promising the return of the harvest. Likewise, the sliver of light in your soul's darkness is a promise of a season of rebirth. You do not yet know where it will lead. But you know one thing, something greater than fear is rising within you. Seeing the sliver of light is a turning point. It does not erase the crisis or make the darkness vanish instantly, but it gives you a new anchor. Hope, not from outside, but from within. And if you are brave enough to continue, the sliver of light will lead you to the door. You move toward the sliver of light and gradually realize it is not just a streak of silver in the darkness. It is a frame, a threshold, a fragile but meaningful boundary. This door is not made of wood or stone, but of the very substance of soul, forgotten memories, unnamed desires, suppressed voices in the unconscious. It appears not as an object, but as an experience. You feel a boundary that must be crossed. This door is not an easy escape. On the contrary, it carries fear, for every threshold is tied to death and rebirth. To pass through, you must leave behind the layers of masks, the old definitions of yourself. You cannot carry the familiar I to the other side, for the door opens only to the I that is becoming. In Ion, I wrote, wholeness cannot be reached without passing through the threshold of dissolution. That is what is happening here. The door of the crisis is an invitation to abandon the old image, to move toward a new form. You stand before the door, and the ego trembles. It will say, if I pass through, I will die. But the soul whispers, if you do not pass through, you will never truly live. In dreams, the door often appears as a liminal symbol, a frame leading to another house, a dungeon with an iron gate, a portal in the forest. Patients often recount fearing to open the door in their dreams, unsure of what lies beyond. I always explain, the door in the dream is a reflection of the threshold of transformation, a gateway to a deeper layer of the unconscious and ultimately to the central self. Imagine you are holding the door's handle. It is cold, heavy, as if bearing the weight of your personal history. Each scratch on it is an unhealed memory, each creak a reminder that you cannot delay forever. And as you gently push, you hear the hinges groan like the voice of your soul, long unopened, now calling for courage. In ancient traditions, initiation rituals always involve a threshold. The one who passes through must face a trial, must die in their old form to be reborn. This is called liminality, the state of being in between, where you are no longer the old, but not yet the new. Here, at the threshold, you see what a crisis truly is, not an enemy, but a ritual. The door that opens does not promise comfort. It does not guarantee that the other side will be filled with light, but it guarantees one thing: the other side is truth. Passing through the door is agreeing to face yourself, unshielded, without excuses. And in that nakedness, you begin to find liberation. You may hesitate, you may turn away, but this door will not disappear. Once it has appeared in a crisis, it will always be there, waiting for you. Thus, the question is no longer, is this door real? But, do you dare to step through? If you listen, you will hear the door's invitation, not as a threatening call, but as the soul's whisper, trust. The other side is not an end, but the beginning of wholeness. You have stood before the door, hand trembling, heart heavy, and then, with a deep breath, you have pushed it open. The hinges creak, not to frighten, but to signal that the shift has begun. You step through and immediately feel a difference. The space beyond is not a radiant paradise, would a quiet expanse. Yet, in that quiet, something vital emerges. You feel intact and at the same time changed. Reconciliation begins here. The shadow you once feared no longer hides in the darkness. It sits before you like an old friend. You no longer want to kill it or flee from it. You simply look at it and acknowledge you are part of me. And miraculously, in that moment, the darkness softens. For the shadow never sought to rule you. It only wanted to be recognized. In Ion, I wrote, the shadow, when recognized and integrated, becomes a source of creative energy. Now you understand this through lived experience. The energy, once repressed, once destructive in the unconscious, now becomes a stream of strength that helps you stand tall and walk forward. Reconciling with the shadow is not about accepting all flaws, but realizing that within the darkness lies a light waiting to be freed. Individuation, the process of becoming yourself, begins with this reconciliation. It is not a one-time perfection, but a long journey where each day you learn to hear another voice in your soul, to reclaim another forgotten piece. And gradually you sense the self, the deep center, like a sun within, illuminating both light and darkness, embracing all. The symbolic image here is light, filtering through the forest. You realize you are no longer walking in a night forest, but in a dawn forest. The sunlight does not erase all darkness, but it makes the darkness clear, gentle, no longer threatening. The darkness now serves as a backdrop for the light to shine more clearly. In many dreams, patients tell me that after passing through the door, they see a new path opening toward dawn. This is not a dream promising instant happiness, but a dream confirming you have entered a new phase. Individuation does not erase crises, but transforms them into a source of life. For from now on, you understand that every crisis is an open door. And instead of fearing, you learn to bow to the door when it appears, knowing that on the other side is a new part of yourself waiting to be born. In the alchemical tradition, this stage is called coniunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites. Fire and water, light and darkness, self and shadow, all merge, not to exclude, but to form a living whole. This is true rebirth, not by escaping, but by returning to yourself. You emerge from this journey not as a perfect person, but as a whole person, carrying both light and darkness, both weakness and strength. And in that wholeness, you find a deep peace that nothing external can grant. Just when you think you have entered a new phase, another figure appears before a deeper threshold. The gatekeeper, not a foreign enemy, but the most familiar part of you, the persona, the mask you have worn so long to survive. The gatekeeper stands there with a stern gaze, cloaked in a mantle woven from societal expectations, family customs, the invisible commands you have absorbed throughout your life. He speaks, do you intend to abandon everything? Who will you become if you are no longer the dutiful child? The model employee, the reliable friend? His question echoes like a sharp sword, making your heart constrict. In psychological types, I said that the ego is adept at creating reasons to resist change. It speaks in the voice of morality, reason, even love. If you pass through, you will betray everything. But the truth is, what the gatekeeper fears is not betrayal, but freedom. For freedom means The mask no longer holds dominion. The gatekeeper is not just a figure in therapy. In dreams, he often appears as a god, a priest, a strict teacher. Many patients have told me they met a figure in their dreams blocking the path, posing final questions. And those questions always strike at the deepest vulnerability. Who are you afraid of losing if you become yourself? This is a critical moment. You cannot kill the gatekeeper, for he is the part you once needed to survive. But you can look into his eyes and say, thank you for protecting me. Now I need to go further. Then the gatekeeper often smiles quietly and fades into the darkness. For his function is not to imprison, but to test, to verify if you are truly resolved. In mythology, no hero enters a new world without facing the guardian of the threshold. Orpheus had to negotiate with Hades. Gilgamesh had to pass through divine gates, and so must you. The gatekeeper is the inner test, forcing you to answer the final question: do you truly want to live by your soul, or merely redecorate the mask? When you answer with utter honesty, you hear the soft click of a lock. The door appears again, wider, deeper, and you know, a new layer of the journey begins. After passing the gatekeeper, you enter a new phase, the trial within the alchemical vessel. Here, the soul is no longer in a raging storm or standing before a threshold, but is placed in a sealed vessel, a space within where fire burns steadily. The ancients called this the athanor, the alchemical furnace that keeps the fire burning evenly, neither too fierce to destroy, nor too weak to die out. In the alchemical process, raw metal is placed in a sealed vessel, melted over time, until it transforms into a new substance. Likewise, in analytical psychology, I call this enduring the tension of opposites. You must learn to stay with contradiction, with pain, with uncertainty, without fleeing or acting hastily. For the soul transforms only when held long enough in the fire. If you break the vessel too soon, all efforts turn to smoke. This explains why many fall into cycles of crisis. They endure some pain, then seek escape through familiar shortcuts, addiction, destructive behavior, or hastily crafting a new mask. But all this only keeps the metal raw. In Psychology and Alchemy, I wrote, there is no transformation without fire, and no fire without a vessel to contain it. You are that vessel. When you accept staying in the crisis, in solitude, in contradiction, without rushing to dispel it, you allow the soul's alchemy to unfold. The symbol of this stage in dreams is often intense. Stifling images, a cramped room, a blazing heart, a boiling pot. Many patients have told me they dreamed of being trapped in a greenhouse or squeezed into a small box. I explain, this is not punishment, but preparation. It is this pressure that births a new form. You will find yourself enduring the tension between opposites, hope and despair, strength and weakness, the desire to live and the fear of death. But instead of choosing one side, you learn to hold both. This is the secret of conjunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites. In the fireproof vessel, what seemed opposed gradually blends, and that blending births a new essence. Imagine you are raw metal, now transforming into gold. Not material gold, but the gold of the soul wholeness. This does not happen in a fleeting moment, but through patient endurance. Thus, the practice in this stage is to stay with the emotion, the dream, the uncertainty, without rushing to resolve it. The alchemical vessel is not a prison, but a place where the soul is forged. And when the fire has matured, when the metal has softened, you will feel a change. No longer the old person, yet not quite the new. This is the in-between stage, and it prepares you for the next step, living in the world with the door already open. Every crisis, when accepted and passed through, ceases to be a collapse and becomes an open door leading us back to ourselves, where light and darkness become one, our